Welcome, everybody, to the Bry and Samua Show. I'm Bry.
And I'm Samua. And we are not in studio.
No,
we're being fancy on location.
I know, you know.
That's how fancy we already got.
If you knew how much this room costs per night, you'd be so impressed. I know I am, and I'm sure my insurance company is too.
Yes, this is true. That is a whole other conversation about
Yeah.
insurance companies.
We'll get onto that one
Which
later.
is so funny that you actually made that comment, because I was just talking to Isaac's friend who's from England. And here in America, we love to compare how, like, we should just have free healthcare, like this and that and that. And he needs to have surgery on his knee from an injury with playing basketball here in the college. So I asked him, like, oh, because he has a deductible, you know, so you have to pay the $1,500 deductible. And I'm like, oh, so are you just going to go home and get it done there? Because you can get it for free. He's like, no. He's like, I have to wait months before I get into the surgery because it's not an emergency and this and that. And he's like, sure, it's free, but it's not going to be a great doctor. And he wants to be able to keep playing basketball. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to pay the $1,500.
It is something to think about, because I had a friend in Barbados. They had free health care, and she was very sick. And I went to go see her, and she was in a room with, I don't know, 50 of her friends, and they were just lined up. It was really, so, you know.
It's the same thing in Brazil. We have free healthcare. But in those countries, and I don't think a lot of people realize that here, is everybody who can afford the private healthcare pays a shit ton of money to have private healthcare, even though they have free universal healthcare. So anyways, we digress.
We'll talk about that today. Hey, if you get a chance, please click subscribe, like, and make sure that you tell your friends and forward this to anybody that you want to. We would love to have more viewers.
Yes. Go check out old episodes. If this is your first time joining us, we've talked about New Year's resolutions, sex, running, you name it. So make sure you keep joining us.
Nothing's off the table on this podcast, just so you know. And we'd love your ideas. So in the comments, if you want to put ideas, we'd love to see them, and we'll explore those as we move forward.
So we thought today we would talk a little bit about current events, just because we both have a lot of current events going on in our life. And there's obviously a lot happening in our world. And as we've had some conversations in trying to process that ourselves, we figured, hey, let's share that conversation with you guys.
You got it. You got it. So just a quick update. I've got about another 2 weeks in here, and then I'm going to get sprung. Everything's looking good. I had a bone marrow transplant, and everything is turning out really well. And so a couple of weeks just to kind of monitor some things, check out some meds I'm going to be getting, make sure that they do good. And then I'm going to get out, and that's going to be wonderful. This experience has been really interesting to me. So if you have a family member or anyone that might be potentially going through a cancer diagnosis and they need to reach out to somebody to get some information that may be recently going through that, have them reach out to me. I would love to talk to them, because I've learned a lot, and I really have experienced several different things that I could share with them. So don't hesitate to do so. But that's enough about me. How about you?
I do appreciate the Cleveland Clinic touching upon that functional medicine and making your room a nice little sauna for you.
Yeah.
To help with detoxing.
I did forget, though, that since
the Brazilian is loving that.
I know, right? Since Friday, we've had no air or heat, and it's very toasty in here. Now, they tried to hook up these big air conditioning units with these gigantic things to go into the ceiling to try to pump air.
But it's not really working.
They're not really working. But, you know, it is what it is. There's a missing part.
Alas, it is Cleveland. So our couple days of spring is going away, and snow's coming back for you.
It'll be nice.
Winter's returning for a few more days.
So then I'll be calling you, and I'll be under covers, and I'll be wearing
too cool.
a winter coat in here. So there you go.
Yeah, so for us, it's been really busy, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. We took in Tommy, as you know, from the beginning of the year. For those of you that don't know, Tommy is my husband's cousin, and we took emergency custody of him as his grandpa. My husband's uncle passed away somewhat unexpectedly. Like, we're expecting it because he did have health issues going on, but we thought we had a few more months. Yeah. We didn't interact a ton with them prior to this, but as things were heading south quick with Uncle Jimmy, and Tommy needed to go somewhere, my husband and I, couldn't think of how bad a lot of alternatives could have been for him. So we welcomed him in, and it's been a challenge. My husband and I have dealt with a lot between, my psycho ex that had many death threats and consistently making co-parenting really difficult, to managing a business, buying a building, renovating that. I mean, a lot of very challenging things, a child with special needs. But I think this has been the most challenging for our relationship. I think because it was so unexpected. It was nothing we planned for.
Right.
And it is just very hard parenting a child that you didn't parent from day one, you know?
He brings a lot with him that you guys have to work through because the way that things were with him are very different than the way that you've raised your children.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a very Latina mom. And so if you don't know what that is, just do some searches on, look up Brazilian moms versus American moms on Instagram and you'll see the difference there quick. So that in itself is a huge change for him. And all things considered, he has been doing so well, knowing all that he's dealt with and all the quick changes for him and how young he is. But there's also, you know, one of the things that I've done since day one with my kids is, and I learned, and I had a parent say this, a mom say this at a mom's group way back in the day when I only had one child, where kids will meet the bar wherever you place it. And I totally parented from that perspective, as well as given them more credit than not. And so I think a lot of times, especially in the culture here, we tend to think, oh, they're just a little kid or they're just this. And each kid is different. And so I remember picking up on certain things about Joelle, for example, where people would be like, she's just the sweetest thing. And then there'd be certain things, and she was only 6 months old. And I remember there'd be things I'm like, no. She knows exactly what she's doing right now to push Isaac's buttons. That is totally intentional. Just different things like that. And so we do approach it from that perspective. There's a lot of accountability at our house. There's a lot of conversations about everything is a choice that you make. Even the other day, I picked him up from school and he's like, well, this kid was saying potty words and then he made me say potty. But I'm like, no. Nope, you will never get away with saying that in this house. Nobody made you do anything. Right. It was your choice to say the potty words because you know better and you could have simply chosen not to do so. So yeah, it's been pretty challenging. Just when we think we're maybe turning a corner, it's like, oh, wait, no, now we're doing this. But it's also been eye-opening and just affirming. It's been very challenging between my husband and I at times. But also there's been so many great moments of growth within our relationship, and just constantly the thought of me is, wow, this man really does love me a lot.
And that's important, you know, because, you know, through good times and bad times, it's the vows you took, right?
Yeah.
And you take them and you think, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. But then when those bad times come, it really is something you got to think about.
It's nice that when push comes to shove and something that could create friction or a gap, you know, and even if it does, like, in the initial reaction, our, you know, the foundation of our marriage still comes up to the surface, where it's like, hey, no, like we're in this together, and you know, we're gonna figure this out, kind of thing. So.
It's the same with Brad and I. You know, we were unexpectedly getting this diagnosis.
You didn't plan for this. It wasn't in your bingo card for 26
for November of 25. But you know, he's been great, and there's a lot that falls on his shoulders too, because I'm just in here hanging out. You know, but he's got to take care of all the things at home and manage the bills and do all that stuff and work and drive 45 to 50 minutes to come see me when he comes up here. So it's a lot to ask, but he does it, never complains. And when I always check in on him, you know, how you doing? He's always like, I'm doing fine. Everything's good. And so I think that says a lot about the person when you put them in that position. Who are they really? And I agree with you. I've learned a lot. It's been great.
So then that kind of brings us to some current events happening. And when I first had the thought about all these different things to process all at one time and so early in 2026,
right,
it was around the Super Bowl, because all the drama that came around that, which I generally didn't understand, because I'm like, they've had all these different artists before, and I mean, they had Shakira and J-Lo a couple years ago, and Bad Bunny was a part of that show. So I didn't really understand, even when the conversation started back in October, I think it was October, right, about it. And then as we got close and through the Super Bowl, and then I start to see all these people post about, you know, I'm going to boycott it to watch this one, and, you know, screw the other one because Bad Bunny is king of the world. This is just a Super Bowl halftime show. Like, why does anybody think either way about it?
Yeah.
And then the conversation I had with my husband, I'm like, I know this happened a little bit against the NFL in October, but then the conversation kind of fell from the NFL, and it was just more culturally, I guess. I don't know what you'd word it. But it was also like, if anybody thinks for 1 second that the NFL was trying to make a political statement by having Bad Bunny, what world were you on? Social media probably took that and ran with it, and the NFL loved it because, you know, good or bad, as they say, it's good press, right? But to me, they picked Bad Bunny because one, the NFL is trying to break into the Latin market significantly more. For anybody who lives under a rock, they're doing more and more games, specifically in Brazil and Mexico. They've been doing the European games for a while, but they've been trying to break into that market for a while, and they have to compete with soccer.
Right.
And sure, like the Super Bowl gets what, 300, 400 million viewers. The World Cup gets 3 billion. So that's what they're competing against. And guess what's this summer? The World Cup. So what did the NFL think? Hey, let's have a Latin person come in, because as people is gearing up for the World Cup and this whole big, mostly Latin culture phenomenon, we're going to get all this attention too, because we're going to be part of the conversation. And then somehow that became some really crazy political statement on either side of things.
But think about it. Haven't we been in this thing for years?
Since COVID, it's definitely more noticeable. It just
feels like the littlest things all of a sudden get turned into, you either hate it, and if you hate it and I like it, then we can't be friends.
Right.
And
also, it's if you like A, then it must mean that you also like B, C, and D, and it means that you are this and this, which is like, no, I could like A, not agree with B and C, appreciate D, but still not fall into either of those categories. Forbid really, that you don't fill the perfect mode that checks boxes.
The label attachment has been really disheartening for me, because you see people being listed as this or that or the other thing, and they're not. But I think what's happened, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like over the years it's become a way. Now, look, when you think about it, there are a lot of Americans and we have a lot of power, but it's being reduced by asking us to choose something. And then if you don't agree with your neighbor, then you fight, right? So now my neighbor and I aren't going to align together to move something forward because we're fighting. And that's how you get control over different things.
And really that impacts things more, because what you and your neighbor can do together, even if you have different political parties, right? But there is a need in your community for something. And if you two can work together, to make that need happen, whether it's a new playground, whether it's support for, single moms, whatever it is, but a societal need that needs to happen. If you and your neighbor and, the neighbors in the other like the next street over, whatever, even if you guys don't agree in every little aspect, but you can come together to go help build that playground, to go, whatever it might be that would create positive change in your own backyard and be effective. Now that's not happening anymore.
No, it's not.
But at the end of the day, you're being split up over these bigger label things that you don't actually get to personally affect. Sure, we can vote.
Right.
But who knows where that really happens now, what that really is affecting nowadays. But me and my neighbor could actually lock up together and be productive and tangibly make a difference in our own community. But now we're not doing it anymore because we're too busy judging each other based on what flag we're waving or not, and what, But 25 years ago, you wouldn't even know, and you would do that anyways,
Exactly.
You guys could have been totally different religions or political parties or whatever, and you wouldn't have known because people didn't talk about it. It wasn't getting posted on social media. And so you would just show up together for cleanup day at the park, and everybody would work together, and that's just not happening anymore.
I actually had somebody say to me, if they knew that I was a particular party voter, that they would not have been my friend. They thought I was, the same as them. But if they would have known that, they would have never been friends with me. And I thought, and I just looked at them and I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. And I just really, it's disheartening.
Yeah.
However, we've stayed friends just because I didn't take offense to it. I'm just like, whatever. But I was disheartened by that because I'm not any different, regardless of how I do or this or that, And I feel personally having that personally happen to me really opened my eyes to the fact that we're getting schnookered.
Right. We definitely are. I think
we're getting schnookered, people.
I had read Animal Farm by George Orwell way back in the day in high school, and definitely did not appreciate it for what it was back then.
Yeah.
But then through last 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, I read 1984. And if you want to call me a conspiracy theorist, call me that. But I do believe that is kind of the game plan as George Orwell wrote back in the 40s or 50s when he wrote that book, where they give us this false sense of power by giving us a vote and having parties that we align with. But then at the end of the day, they're kind of in the same boat. The parties are kind of
the parties are both the same,
working together.
I agree. I just feel like, there's all this panic. Have you guys ever experienced this much panic?
I know.
It just goes from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. Can we just have a break from all this? But no, it seems like just when we have a chance to breathe,
one thing,
this next thing crops up, and it's intentional, I swear.
Yeah. Well, because conveniently, leading up to the whole Super Bowl drama, there was all of the ICE stuff, which we haven't really heard anything about in the past, like 2-3 weeks.
I haven't seen that on the news.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard it on any talk show.
The thing that cracks me up the most, because I don't ever really watch TV, and so a lot of my little headline tidbits does come from social media. But when I'm at the gym, and there's TVs in front of me, and they do have them in every, it's CNN and MSNBC and Fox, so it's all the different affiliates, and it's cracked me up because sometimes they will have the same quote, but then they're talking about it from, because this person said this, they're the biggest a-hole and this and that, the other thing. And then the very next channel will quote the same thing because this person said this, they're saving the world. And I'm like, wait, huh? It's so confusing. And I really got to the point where anytime I read any headline, no matter which party, no matter which political person, or no matter which artist said it, I always start with my husband. Whenever I tell my husband stuff, I'm always so supposedly, because no matter which one, you don't know what is 100%, what is accurate, or things are getting taken out of context all the time.
And have you noticed a lot of AI stuff?
Yes, that's the other thing too.
AI is so crazy right now because it is taking things that people are doing and adding in the AI flavor to change it.
I know.
And you don't know.
Well, like that story you sent us, it had something to do with the Browns.
Oh, what was it?
I don't remember. But then you were like, oh my gosh, look at this. And then we come to find out it's not even a story.
Never mind.
That's the other thing too. And we were actually, my husband and I were just on a run the other day, and we were talking about that because we like our people, like, 20 plus something maybe right now and older, we know when AI didn't exist, right? Yeah. And so I always know now, even when I see pictures,
you got to stop and think.
Yeah, look at this person with this person. It's is that an AI? You just can't take anything. So we were talking about that. We know to pause and be like, oh, maybe this could be this. Even videos, could be AI. Could be AI.
The videos are like easy.
But if you think of like high school age, middle school age, and younger now, by the time they get to be where they're voting and they're having to process things, like they may not even think that they have to do that because they always will have known AI, and they'll just trust what they're told. And
I know.
It's a scary thought.
It really is. So this has been on our minds, and we'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because it's kind of crazy and it's so frustrating because I'm tired.
Yes, it is exhausting.
I'm tired of it. It's just so hard you've got to find the joy in the things that you can control in your family and your friends and all that. I have learned that by being in the hospital, because I stopped listening to some podcasts. I stopped watching news. And I have found that my blood pressure is amazing. I'll just tell you that much. And I swear that it's been such a good cleansing thing for me just to take a step away. I didn't even know we were at war or bombed somebody until Brad came, and it was a day later.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm putting my head in the sand, but it's just the fact that sometimes you just got to take a break.
Well, it's so
walk away because there's so much out there to do that's good. Yeah.
I mean, like we said, it's just so hard, in my opinion. And I guess I'm thankful because I've had, between like my experience with the autism community, what I started to learn back in 2011, the things that the autism community started to kind of figure out and piece together, and just realize some of the behind the scenes puppetry that can happen. And then being an immigrant. So there are things that have come to light recently, the whole ICE stuff, that again, I see the media sensationalize these things, and it's horrible. Nobody should get shot and killed. I don't think anybody should ever be murdered for any particular reason, especially if they're trying to protect somebody. They think that they're doing the right thing and all of this stuff. But I also see where and this is part of the reason why I've come to the conclusion that I've come, that it's like, you can't trust either side. You can't trust the headlines, because I am ears to the ground with some of this stuff that's now being talked about. So a lot of this ICE stuff, it's not new. Like in
Boston.
Right. Like I was, the whole job rating things in communities like in Southern Florida, Boston, where there's bigger immigrant communities for a long time. Like anybody who was illegal in Massachusetts, for example, anytime they went to work, like they went to work holding their breath, like knowing that any given day, they could get, there was a strip of highway that would go from New Hampshire up to Vermont and on and off. Like they'd be talking, this was before social media, so I don't even know how they got the word out. But I remember being, 15, 16 and hearing the buzzes of like, oh, be careful when you drive on this road because like every Monday and Thursday, there's always this ICE blockade or they're doing this. And my uncle literally had ICE stalk his house. And and this was, I think, about 10 years ago now, because time just goes by so fast, maybe even a little bit long. It might even be more like 15 years ago. And one morning his neighbor called and they were like, hey, I think ICE, and he lives in a affluent town, a nice, would be for us, it'd be the equivalent of like a Solon in a nice house. He's an upstanding citizen. He's here. He was here illegally. He came in through the country. He came from Brazil through the Mexico border and all of this stuff. But other than that, like he's raised a couple kids. They were in high school at the time and good, solid, straight A kids, like just a good citizen. Right. And ICE was staking out his house for whatever reason. He got on their radar just because of his illegal status, not because he had done anything wrong, like committed any kind of crime or anything. And then the neighbor called and it's like, yeah, there's like 6 black SUVs around your house. And like we saw the one followed your daughter to school. The other one followed your wife when she left. And then there was 3 that got left behind. And then sure enough, eventually they came, knocked on the door and arrested him. And he was in jail for over a year until they tried to figure out these different statuses and all this stuff. And he got that all worked out. And now he works for the U.S. Post Office. So the irony is funny. But the funny thing too is, I don't know, like what would have happened 15 years ago when he had this situation if then, those 6 vehicles, even though they were spotted by his neighbor, they came in, they did their thing and they left. Nobody did anything. But now you're having situations where, for better or worse, right or wrong, people are, 100 people are coming up and they're protesting and they're throwing things at the car and they're doing this. It's like, no, the right answer is never to react and shoot somebody, but also the right answer is also not to come and aggravate, official vehicles and these different things. And this stuff has been happening always. It just wasn't in the media's attention, so us in the immigrant community knew that. So it's situations like that also gives me the privilege of knowing I can't take everything at face value, or I can't take what how the media is portraying things as how they are, because I know that how they're portraying certain things now is not how it's always been. And it's just, it is exhausting. I'm tired. And it's very hard to keep up with, right? Because just when you think this is the thing, then all of a sudden it switches and it becomes this is the thing. And then, again, you never hear about the other thing. Right. The thing that was going to end the world 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden, just suddenly like fell off the radar because something new took its place. But it's just this constant worry. It's this constant push to get you all riled up. And of course, everybody's going to have a different opinion about what that thing is. And now we've been given approval that if I don't agree with you, I cannot like you anymore. And just make all kinds of other judgments about you. Because I disagree with you in this one topic, I can just make all these other assumptions about you. You must be all these other things. Yeah. And I'm just going to say that now. And guess what? I'm no longer going to. I'm blocked you, and I'm letting everybody else know to block you too. It's just so crazy. It is. So I guess from that perspective, I would say don't do that. Yeah, I think the main thing for me, and my husband and I just hung out with really good friends of ours that we know. My husband and I are very much aware that we don't think the same as they do. I don't think they realize that about us. Yeah. And my husband was like, he's like, he's like, what's really good about that was that we are able to hang out with them and have such a good time, enjoy their company. They're friends of ours that we enjoy, but we know that we don't think the same, but we can still have a positive experience. Nowadays, from what stories that he'll hear from patients and things like that, he's like, you can't really do that anymore. And I'm like, right, but I think that's because we're reasonable, moderate people that knows that neither extreme is the answer. And, not any one side is 100% right in every situation. And we can kind of glean what we like and what we agree with and what we don't agree with. And whether it's an organization or an individual, we can focus on where we do agree and the positive and how we can connect in a positive aspect for positive change or connection. And it goes back to, if I'm not open to your ideas, let's say you and I are on the opposite on something, and I'm not even open to your ideas, I'm only going to know my own. But if I'm open to your ideas,
you and I could create something great, because the two of us are going to combine those ideas and take the best out of everything and move it forward.
Right, right.
But nobody's doing that anymore.
Or even just agree to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Just say, I respect you. And that's really what you want to do. I respect you. And
Right.
I may not always agree with everything, but I still respect you and I love you.
I think a lot of people
Yeah.
come to conclusions, blanket conclusions based on these sensationalized media propagandas from either
Yeah.
side. And they are like, well, this is what's right or this is what's wrong. But a lot of those people have never had it hit close to home, because it's easy to say always, oh, I will never, until all of a sudden it's your neighbor that you've known for 25 years that's in a situation, or it's, you know, your coworker that is like your work wife or whatever, or and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. That's sometimes when you're challenged, right? You're
I don't
like,
want them to go.
So
but they're great people. And but 5 minutes ago you were going deport, deport.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it just not get caught up in all the hoopla, and maybe turn off the media for a little bit. Give yourself a break and go take a walk outside and spend time with your family, put a puzzle together.
Yeah, one of the things that we keep telling Tommy at our house is to focus on the fact that we're all part of the same team. Leo's always like, we're Team Cormanick, you know, stop trying to one up, stop trying to be better. And I think that's something that us as human beings need to remember.
I
like,
agree.
we are all part of the human race. And yes, there are outliers that are just lost causes, but those are outliers. Like, if you're a math person at all, like the standard bell curve, you know, we can't all of us, we can't have gone the majority of human civilization where most people fall in the bell curve, where they're decent human beings trying to live a decent life, mostly do good, you know.
And then, of both sides of the spectrum.
Right. And of course, there's the outliers, right? That yes, there's going to be the outliers that are the a-holes, and you just, you know, there's just no hope for them. But that not all of a sudden that hasn't flipped. And if you look at social media, if you look at the media, you would think that now like 80% of the human race, no matter which side you believe on, 80% just suck, you know, and they're the worst people ever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not, you know, just connect with other people based on where you find common ground and how you want to positively impact and solve a problem that our society or our culture has. And then just let that be what brings you together, even if there's other details of it that you guys don't agree with.
I think about my work. Where I work is huge diversity. So we have to come together every day and we have to work together. And I'm sure that in that room, there's a lot of things we don't agree on. But the one thing we do agree on is what we're working on, the task at hand, and we make great decisions based on everybody's input. And so I think about that sometimes because, you know, and I love these people that I work with so much, because they all bring something so rich to the table. And I don't care what they vote for or what they think about this or that or the other thing. It's irrelevant because that's their decision and I respect it. And I know not everybody's like that, but if you could treat it like that, think of a situation that you're in where you've got something like that. You're with a bunch of diverse, different people and you found it to be so joyful. And that's really where we want to focus. I'm going to focus anyway.
Yes. So our challenge to you guys and to ourselves is to tone down the voices from everywhere and just in person interact with people and without worrying about any of their labels, and then judge them based on that. Like, how do you connect with them and just the energy? Like we can, you know, you all can walk into a room and right away, like, especially us women, right? Like our guts, it's like, ugh, you know, my husband and I at times will be like, oh, I didn't like that person. It's like, well, why? I thought they were super nice. No. And then like a year later, he's like, guess what? You were right. And I'm like, I know. You know, so it's like, go in person before you pass a judgment. Like, challenge yourself to go to something or have a conversation with somebody. You know, as a matter of fact, this happened to me with the autism thing. When I first was researching stuff, oh, I'm not going down this road because these people are quacks and they're crazy. And then I happened to totally, by ignorance, end up in a conference where a lot of the people thought that way. And oh, it turns out they aren't quacks. And it's not quite what the media was saying. And having my own medical background, oh no, this stuff makes sense to me. And and you know, and I would never, Naomi probably wouldn't be where she was today.
Oh, no, she wouldn't.
If I hadn't totally blindsidedly, you know, gone to this one conference that I had on my list as like worst heathens of the world. So just surprise yourself.
I agree with you.
We're all part of the human race.
Step out of the box and do something a little bit different.
Love your
and
neighbor.
See where it takes you. Yeah, especially your neighbors. Oh my gosh. Neighbors are going crazy.
What was the Super Bowl thing that Bunny had up? the only thing, which has obviously been said in different ways, what is it? The only thing that's more stronger than hate, more stronger. That was such good grammar. The only thing that is stronger than hate is love, or something like,
Yeah.
that is so true. Like,
I agree with that.
let's focus on what we can find that's positive and connect each other. And our world needs a lot of love and a lot of positivity.
Agreed.
So,
good job.
Well, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Toodaloo.
Bye.